Okay, hello class. We are here for lesson 12 in unit 7. And so for this here, what we're going to be doing is practicing constructing axes on a coordinate plane from scratch. So this is going to be something that you're going to face a lot. You might have graph paper or a coordinate plane like this, but then there's nothing on it. It's just sort of plain. And you're going to have to figure out how to draw the axes, the x and y axes, and then what's going to go where. So this isn't an exact science. There's more than one way you can go about this, but there are some parameters or guidelines you want to follow based on the points that you're going to have to plot. So in the case of this set of points, we want to consider like the smallest values for x, and the biggest values for x, and then the smallest values for y, and the biggest values for y. That's how we want to give an idea about how to draw our axis here. So you can see here, this one involves, if I look at the x-axis, I have 1, 3, -5, and 0. So my smallest value would be -5, my biggest value would be 3. So I want to draw an x-axis that goes maybe from -5 to 3, but let's maybe go a little bit past each of those. So let's maybe say, let's go from -6 to 6. So what you would do is you're going to use the straight line tool, and you can really kind of start just about anywhere on here. Okay, I recommend starting somewhere, sort of in the middle of the screen, and you can just go ahead and draw it here. But we want to go ahead and count out and see as we go across here. We could say if this is -6. This will be -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so you want to go ahead from there and label 0. So I'm going to go back in, and we're going to see exactly where 0 is again. We said this was -6. Let's label that -6. And there we go. And then let's find 0. So we're going to label 0. So again, to count it here, -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0. So right here is going to be 0. Good to know where 0 is. And then at the end, we said it was 6, right? So we'll just count again to make sure that this is 0. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. So that takes care of the x-axis. Now for the y-axis, again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to consider the smallest and biggest points on the y-axis. So I've got 2, -4, -2, and 2.5. So it looks like the smallest out of those would be -4, right? And then the biggest would be 2.5. So let's go ahead, and with -4 is the smallest, let's go down to -5, and let's go up to +5. So let's go ahead, and then we'll start at 0. We'll count down. Here's -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So we can start here, and then we'll just go up. But we know this is 0, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so let's also go ahead and label these here. This we should know. Whoops, I don't need that big of a box. We should know that this is the y-axis, make it lowercase, and we should also know that this is the x-axis. Okay, so from here, now we know that we're going to be able to plot all the points on this coordinate plane. We've got room for all of them, right? So let's just go through. We'll use the drawing tool. How about I use orange just for the heck of it? So let's go one point at a time. For 1, 2. I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to go sideways to 1 and then up to 2. So 2 is going to be right here. And as I remember that, we should go ahead and put in some landmarks on the y-axis as well, right? This is 0. We said this was 5. So I'm going to put the 5 here. All right. We said that this one was -5. -5. Okay. So we're going by ones then, right? So we know that this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I'm going to hope that you guys go ahead and label each of these marks here and make sure that you're going by the same on each one here. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? This would be -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay, same for all these here. For time purposes, I'm going to go ahead and skip a little bit of this here. So the next point here, it's 3, -4. I'm going to go sideways to 3. 1, 2, 3. And then down to -4. -1, -2, -3, -4. So right here. And then the next one, -5, -2, start at the origin. Go over to -5. Here's -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. And then down to -2. -1, -2. There. And then for 0, 2.5, start at the origin. You're going to go sideways, nothing, because it's 0. And then you're just going to go to the right, 2.5. So here's 1, here's 2. It's going to be halfway. Okay. They don't have any letters or anything to label the points with, so we can just leave them as points like that. Okay. Now for the next one here, we have a different looking set of numbers, right? We have, I see 50, I see 0, I see -30, right? -35. So for this one here, it's not going to make sense to make the axes the same way, labeling them with like -6 or -5. We are going to need bigger numbers. You don't have to actually have every box always count for 1. We can have them count for more than 1, right? And so it looks like here we could use multiples of 10, I would say, would be a good way to show this here. So we can say, okay, if I've got a maximum of 50 for both the x and the y-axis, and then the minimum, it looks like we have -35 for x and -30 for y. We can just go ahead, let's just label all 4 points, minimum and maximum, as 50. So for the x-axis, we'll go from -50 to 50. So let's get the underlining tool. And we can just start here is fine. Okay, doesn't have to be exact. So this would be -50, -40, -30, -20, -10, 0, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50. Okay, so let's go ahead and label that in. This was going to be -50. And then we're going to count to make sure we have 0 in the right place. So if this is -40, this is -50 here. This is -40. This is -30, -20, -10, 0. And then assuming that's correct, then we know that this is going to be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So this is going to be 50. Okay, and maybe extend the line just a tiny bit to get to there. All right, so we have that set up. Okay, so for this one here, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go ahead and label in all of the values here just to make sure you guys are clear on what goes where. So this would be -40. And let me go one size smaller to make sure that it is going to be able to fit here. All right, and so this is going to be -30. And I'll zoom in one level here. Okay, so -30 is here. So that means that this next one is going to be -20. And then we have -10. All right, and then continuing on, this would have to be 10. And this would be 20. These are all multiples of 10. 30. And 40. Okay, that's the x-axis. So I'm going to add in a box here to clarify that this is the x-axis. Let me go one bigger in size. All right, for the y-axis, again, we were looking at what we were dealing with here. The y-axis, we have we said we were going to go from -50 to 50 again, right? So let's go ahead and do that here because we have the minimum is -30. So as I think about it, if the minimum is -30, but the maximum is 50. So let's do -50 to +50 as we said. So the way that's going to work, we need to make sure that we use the line tool here. Hopefully we have space here. If this is going to be 0, this is -10, -20, -30, -40, -50. So we'll start the line here. This is -50. Now we're to 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 is going to go all the way up here. And I think I moved it just a little bit, did I? No, okay, that's fine. All right, so we have enough space now to plot all the points. So 50, 50. Okay, 50, 50. That means you are going to go, as I'm going to do the pencil here, you're going to go over to 50. Here's 50. And up to 50. So right here. Okay, so this one here, let's go ahead and label this as 50. And let's label the bottom here as negative 50. All right. So there's 1 point, 50, 50. 0, 0. This one's very easy if you know where it is. 0, 0, you don't go anywhere. You go over nothing and you go up and down nothing. It's right on the origin. Negative 10, negative 30. You're going to go over to negative 10 and then down to negative 30. So let me go down here. Over to negative 10, negative 10 on the y-axis, negative 20, negative 30. Right here is going to be that point. And then the last point was negative 35 and 40. So I'm going to go over to negative 35, negative 10, negative 20, negative 30. Negative 35 is going to be in between, right? And then I'm going to go up to 40. 10, 20, 30, 40. Whoops. I'm going in the wrong direction. Okay. Back here. So here is negative 35 and 40. All right. And so for the last little bit here, you can see now we have fractions that are involved. So we think, oh gosh, what are we going to do right now? Well, we want to think in terms of what we're dealing with for our points. We have most all of these here are all out of 4. They're all a certain number of quarters or fourths. 1/4, 3/4, negative 5/4. Okay, so it's telling me, and everything fits in this mold here. Negative 1/2, that's the same thing as negative 2/4. Okay, and this is the same thing as 2/4. So we can just do it in fourths. And how many fourths are in one whole? There would be 4. So there's only one that, well, there's actually 2 that go beyond negative 1. So maybe we can do to the number 2 on each line and have each of the marks be equal to 1/4. So this is going to be a little bit tricky for you to see here. So I'm going to have to really label everything here for you. So we'll use the straight line tool. We want to go from negative 2 to positive 2 on all the axes, just to make sure we cover everything. But each line is going to count for 1/4. So if we start here, for example, this would be negative 2, which would be negative 8/4. Because 8 divided by 4 is 2. So negative 8/4, negative 7/4, negative 6/4, negative 5/4, negative 4/4, which is negative 1, negative 3/4, negative 2/4, negative 1/4, 0, 1/4, 1/2 or 2/4, 3/4, 4/4 is 1, and 5/4. Is this going to cover it? Let's look here. 5/4 would be 1 1/4. That's going to cover all of our points, okay? But let's go ahead and let's move this back all the way to the beginning. This is still 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, 8/4. Now we have 2. Okay, so we need to go ahead and label all of the points here. So basically, we're going to do it in fourths, though. Even though this is negative 2 and this is positive 2, I'm going to describe it in fourths because all of these are going to be able to be plotted based on fourths. So this here is going to be negative 8/4. Put it to the side a little bit. And then the next one is going to be negative 7/4. And maybe I'll just stretch this out from here. So let's go ahead and stretch this out. This is going to be negative 6/4, negative 5/4. If I stretch it out, I'll go all the way across here. Okay, so we can use that. This is going to be negative 4/4 or negative 1. It's going to be negative 3/4, negative 2/4 or negative 1/2, negative 1/4, 0. Okay, I know that could be a little bit tricky. That's 0. This would be 1/4. This would be 2/4, which is 1/2. 3/4. 4/4, which is 1 whole. 5/4. 6/4. 7/4. And 8/4. Okay, so that's a lot. It's a lot of labeling, but it's important that you think about this because this is a whole another lesson in and of itself here that you guys can think about as far as the value of these here. This is -2, and it's also negative 8/4. This is +2, and it's also 8/4. Okay, on the y-axis. Okay, if we want to do the same thing, let's see something here. Let's see how many boxes we have to go across and see if it's the same. So since we use them all, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 boxes. So if we were to use all of them, okay, so we would basically be looking at the same thing is it the same thing going down? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so we don't have quite as much going up. So maybe going up, we will just go to 1 from -1 1/4 to +1 1/4 just to capture it. So we'll just start with, this is 5/4. Okay, so we have for the y value, we have 3/4, 1/2, -3/4, and -1/2. Okay, so really we could probably just do 1 whole on the positive and negative axis and just go from and make it each box be worth 1/4. So like this, we could use the straight line tool, and if we want to go down first, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, or 1 whole. And then from there, I guess I could have gotten this before. We go up 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, which is 1 whole. Okay, we can label that as such. This is going to be 4/4, and this is going to be -4/4. Okay, what you should be able to recognize now is that this is not an exact science, and it's going to take some playing around if the numbers that you have to graph are tricky enough, and it's okay. That's just, you want to be able to think through what you're doing and make sense of it. All right, so we can go ahead and start plotting the points now. We have 1/4, 3/4. So we're going to start at 0. We're going to go over to 1/4, and then up to 3/4. 1, 2, 3. So it's here. I need to get the drawing tool. So over to 1/4, up to 3/4. Right there. 1/4, 3/4. And then for -5/4 and 1/2, we're going to go over to -5/4. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. And then up to 1/2. Well, that's 2/4, remember, right? 1, 2. That's something that's important to catch on to. 1/2, 2/4, same thing. And then for this one here, -1 1/4. We're going to go sideways to -1 1/4. That's the same thing as -5/4. So we're here again. And then at -3/4, we need to go down. -1/4, -2/4, -3/4. So we decided each box is worth 1/4. That's how we're getting there. 1/4 and -1/2, we're going to go sideways to 1/4, and then down to -1/2, which is 2/4, -2/4, -1/4, -2/4, so we're here. Okay. There are other ways to do this, though. You could make your graph with using halves, and in that case, it would look a little bit different. Okay, but the points are going to still be the same general distance apart from each other as long as the scaling is correct. All right, and then so with your partner, you're going to have these discussions about how you did things differently and how the coordinates affected the way you drew the axis, right? You can kind of see what we did. We had to consider the coordinates a lot in determining how to make the axes.